The hangar at Nelly's Air Force Base fell into an unnatural silence at 6:30 hours, the kind of quiet that makes seasoned mechanics stop mid-wrench and look up from their work. Staff Sergeant Kyra Bolt, Voss crouched beneath the belly of F-16C Fighting Falcon tail number 870257, her weathered hands methodically checking hydraulic connections with the precision of someone who'd learned that attention to detail meant the difference between a pilot coming home or becoming a memorial wall photograph. The titanium wrench felt familiar in her grip, an extension of herself after 12 years of military service, but something in the air had changed. She'd noticed it first in the way Lieutenant Colonel Morrison's voice cracked over the maintenance frequency 15 minutes earlier. Not the usual barked orders about readiness reports, but something deeper, more urgent. Then came the hurried footsteps across the polished concrete floor, the whispered conversations between officers who suddenly found reasons to inspect aircraft they'd never shown interest in before. Kyra had seen this dance before, in Iraq during the surge, in Afghanistan when operations went sideways. The brass got nervous when legends walked among mortals. "Voss, you about done under there?" Airman First Class Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying that particular strain of someone trying to sound casual while their world tilted off its axis. Kyra caught the tremor in his words, the same tremor she'd heard in her own voice, the first time she'd watched an F-22 Raptor pilot walk across a tarmac with the easy confidence of someone who owned the sky. But this wasn't about Raptors, or even the experimental aircraft that occasionally graced Nelly's with their presence. This was about her, about the woman whose call sign had become synonymous with impossible repairs and clutch saves, whose reputation preceded her into every assignment like a ghost story told around maintenance bays across 3 continents. The woman who'd kept aircraft flying through sandstorms and missile strikes, who'd earned her nickname not for her mechanical skills, but for something else entirely, something that would make a base commander snap to attention and hold a salute longer than regulation required. Kyra tightened the final bolt with practiced efficiency, feeling the familiar resistance that meant the connection was secure. Above her, the F-16's gun bay gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, each rivet and panel a testament to American engineering and the countless hands that had maintained this particular bird through deployments to places most people couldn't pronounce. She didn't know it yet, but this routine maintenance check would be her last anonymous moment, the final time she could work in blessed obscurity before her past caught up with her present in ways that would reshape everything the Air Force thought it knew about heroes. The echoing footsteps grew closer, and Kyra Voss prepared to become a legend all over again. The maintenance hangar at Nelly's buzzed with the controlled chaos of morning operations, but beneath the familiar symphony of pneumatic tools and jet engine diagnostics, an undercurrent of anticipation thrummed through the ranks like voltage seeking ground. Kyra emerged from beneath the F-16 grease-stained coveralls, bearing the honest wear of someone who fixed things rather than just inspected them. Her calloused hands moved with unconscious precision as she documented torque specifications in her maintenance log, each entry a small act of devotion to the sacred trust between maintainer and pilot. "Bolt, you've got visitors," Rodriguez announced, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously as he gestured toward the hangar's main entrance. Through the heat shimmer rising from the Nevada tarmac, 3 figures approached with the purposeful stride of officers carrying news that would change everything. The lead figure wore the silver eagles of a full colonel, flanked by 2 majors whose uniforms bore the crisp perfection of Pentagon assignments rather than the practical wear of operational squadrons. Kyra straightened slowly, her spine protesting after 2 hours crouched in uncomfortable positions. At 34, her body carried the accumulated toll of military service like a roadmap of dedication. The slight limp from an IED blast in Kandahar, the thin scar along her left forearm from aircraft sheet metal, the careful way she moved her right shoulder after too many years wrestling with recalcitrant aircraft components. but her brown eyes remained sharp, alert, missing nothing as she sized up the approaching delegation. "Staff Sergeant Voss," the colonel called out, his voice carrying across the hangar floor with the authority of someone accustomed to immediate attention. The ambient noise level dropped perceptibly as mechanics and technicians found sudden interest in their work while straining to overhear whatever conversation was about to unfold. Kyra had always preferred the shadows, the honest anonymity of being just another skilled maintainer in a service full of them. Recognition, in her experience, usually came attached to complications. She set down her torque wrench with deliberate care, wiped her hands on a shop rag, and walked toward the officers with the measured pace of someone who'd learned never to appear hurried in front of superior ranks. Her call sign had been earned 8 years earlier during a night mission over Syria, when quick thinking and quicker hands had kept a damaged F-16’s Strike Eagle airborne long enough to reach friendly territory. The pilot had survived. The WSO had survived. The aircraft had been written off as a total loss, but the mission had succeeded, and sometimes that's all the military asked of its people. "Sir," she acknowledged with a crisp nod, not quite coming to attention but showing the proper respect due to rank and circumstance. The colonel's expression remained unreadable, but something in his bearing suggested this wasn't a routine interaction. Behind him, the two majors exchanged glances that spoke of classified briefings and decisions made in rooms Kyra would never see. The Nevada sun blazed overhead, turning the tarmac into a shimmering mirror, but inside the hangar, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees as three careers prepared to intersect in ways none of them could fully anticipate. Colonel Marcus Thorne had walked across tarmacs on 4 continents, delivered news both devastating and triumphant to airmen whose courage had shaped the course of conflicts most civilians would never understand. But standing before Staff Sergeant Kyra Voss, he felt the familiar weight of responsibility that came with being the bearer of news that would fundamentally alter someone's trajectory. The folder tucked under his left arm contained orders that had originated from levels of command, so elevated that even his security clearance provided only glimpses of the full picture. "Sergeant Voss," he began, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of someone who'd learned to deliver life-changing information with clinical precision, "your presence is requested for immediate reassignment to a classified program." The words hung in the air like contrail vapor, visible for a moment before dissipating into implications that neither officer nor enlisted could fully grasp. Around them, the maintenance crews continued their work with exaggerated focus, but Thorne could feel their attention like heat radiation from a turbine exhaust. Kyra's expression remained neutral, but her hand stilled completely, a tell that spoke of someone processing information at speed while maintaining operational security. She'd been through enough classified briefings to know that requests from colonels weren't really requests at all, and reassignments to programs that couldn't be discussed in open hangars usually meant either extraordinary opportunity or extraordinary danger. Sometimes both. "What kind of timeline are we discussing, sir?" she asked, her voice steady despite the sudden acceleration of her pulse. The practical question of a maintainer who understood that aircraft didn't fix themselves and schedules mattered more than personal convenience. Major Catherine Hendricks, standing to Thorne's right, made a note in her portfolio, another data point in the complex calculus of personnel selection that had brought them to this moment. "Effective immediately," Thorne replied, watching Kyra's microexpressions for signs of the stress response that would disqualify her from consideration. What he saw instead was the same steady competence that had earned her 5 Air Force Achievement Medals and the quiet respect of every pilot who'd flown aircraft she'd maintained. "You'll need to complete out processing here within 48 hours. Transport is arranged." The second major, Thomas Brennan, stepped forward with a tablet displaying what appeared to be standard reassignment paperwork. But Kyra caught the subtle variations in formatting that suggested classification levels well above her current access. She'd spent enough time around sensitive programs to recognize the bureaucratic fingerprints of organizations that existed in the shadows between official doctrine and operational necessity. "Sir, with respect," she said, choosing her words with the care of someone who understood that the wrong phrase could end careers, "can you provide any additional context about the nature of this assignment?" It was a reasonable question from a seasoned NCO, the kind of inquiry that demonstrated professional curiosity rather than problematic resistance to authority. Thorne's slight smile suggested approval rather than irritation. "All I can tell you here is that your specific skill set has been identified as critical to national security interests. The details will be provided during your briefing at the new location." The Nevada wind picked up, carrying the scent of jet fuel and desert sage through the open hangar doors, and Kyra Voss realized her anonymous career was about to end forever. The weight of unspoken implications settled over the hangar like the peculiar quiet that preceded thunderstorms. Kyra had participated in enough classified operations to recognize the careful choreography of official secrecy. The way information was parceled out in carefully measured doses, the subtle hierarchy of who knew what and when they were cleared to know it. But this felt different, larger somehow, as if the machinery of national security had focused its considerable attention on one grease-stained maintenance sergeant, with a reputation for keeping aircraft flying under impossible circumstances. "Understood, sir," she replied, falling back on the professional courtesy that had served her well through 12 years of military service. There would be time later to process the implications, to wonder what specific combination of skills and experience had placed her name on a list that reached the attention of Pentagon-level decision-makers. For now, there were protocols to follow, and a transition to manage with the same methodical precision she applied to aircraft maintenance. Major Hendricks consulted her tablet with the efficiency of someone accustomed to managing complex logistics. "Sergeant Voss, you'll report to Building 1348 at 1400 hours for initial out-processing. Personal effects will be shipped to your new duty station through standard channels, though I recommend packing essential items for immediate travel." The practice delivery suggested she'd managed similar transitions before, though something in her demeanor hinted that this particular reassignment carried unusual significance. Rodriguez and the other mechanics maintained their studied focus on various maintenance tasks, but Kyra could feel their curiosity like static electricity in the air. Word would spread through the base before she reached the administration building. The maintenance grapevine operated with efficiency that would impress intelligence agencies. By evening chow, every wrench-turner on Nellie's would know that Bolt Voss had been pulled for something big, something that required colonels to deliver orders personally and majors to handle paperwork that couldn't be transmitted through normal channels. "Sir, what about my current maintenance schedule?" she asked, gesturing toward the F-16 that represented 12 hours of meticulous work and another 8 hours of scheduled inspections. The question revealed the practical mindset that had made her indispensable, even facing career-altering orders. Her first concern remained the aircraft and crews depending on her expertise. Colonel Thorne's expression softened slightly, revealing the pilot beneath the administrator. "Your replacement has already been identified and will be briefed on all outstanding work orders. The aircraft will be properly maintained." The assurance carried the weight of someone who understood that maintainers' professional pride was inextricably linked to the aircraft under their care. As the officers prepared to depart, Kyra caught a glimpse of Major Brennan's portfolio as it shifted in the desert wind. Through the gap between pages, she saw what appeared to be aircraft silhouettes, not the familiar profiles of current Air Force inventory, but something sleeker, more angular, with design characteristics that suggested capabilities beyond conventional fighter aircraft. The image disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, but not before burning itself into her memory with the clarity that came from years of studying technical drawings and aircraft specifications. The meeting concluded with handshakes and the formal courtesy of military hierarchy. But as the officers walked away across the sun-bleached tarmac, Kyra Voss felt the distinctive sensation of standing at the threshold of something unprecedented, something that would test every skill she'd accumulated and demand capabilities she didn't yet know she possessed. The afternoon sun transformed the Nevada landscape into a shimmering mirage of heat and possibility as Kyra made her way across Nellis Air Force Base toward Building 1348. Her footsteps echoed against concrete sidewalks that had witnessed the passage of countless airmen whose careers had pivoted on moments just like this, orders that arrived without warning and departed with lives forever altered. The administrative building loomed ahead, its generic military architecture offering no hints about the extraordinary circumstances that had brought her to its doors. Inside, the familiar bureaucracy of military outprocessing unfolded with practiced efficiency, but beneath the routine paperwork and standard procedures, Kyra detected subtle variations that spoke to the classified nature of her reassignment. The clerk who handled her personnel records possessed security credentials typically reserved for intelligence specialists. The medical officer who conducted her abbreviated physical exam asked questions about G-force tolerance and spatial disorientation that seemed oddly specific for a maintenance position. Each interaction added another piece to a puzzle whose complete picture remained tantalizingly out of reach. "Sergeant Voss," called a voice from behind her as she completed the final administrative checkpoint. She turned to find Chief Master Sergeant David Park, a 26-year veteran whose reputation for straight talk and unwavering integrity had made him a father figure to generations of enlisted personnel. His weathered face carried the particular expression of someone delivering advice that couldn't be officially recorded, but needed to be heard. "Chief," she acknowledged, offering the respectful nod due to someone whose chevrons represented decades of accumulated wisdom and hard-earned authority. Park had been at Nelly's when she'd arrived 3 years earlier, had watched her transform from a competent but unremarkable maintainer into someone whose name appeared on the short list for the most challenging assignments. "Walk with me," he said, setting a casual pace that would allow for conversation without attracting unwanted attention. They moved through corridors lined with photographs of aircraft and airmen whose contributions to Air Force history had earned them permanent recognition. The images seemed to watch their passage, silent witnesses to another career about to take an unexpected trajectory. "Word is you're heading somewhere that doesn't officially exist," Park said quietly, his voice carrying the careful modulation of someone who understood the boundaries of classified information. "Can't say I'm surprised. Your work on that Syrian retrieval operation got attention at levels most people never reach." The reference to her call sign's origin carried weight. Park had been briefed on the classified details that had earned her the nickname Bolt, had understood the quick thinking and technical expertise that had saved 2 lives and preserved operational security during a mission that couldn't be acknowledged publicly. They paused beside a display case containing artifacts from the Air Force's experimental aircraft programs, relics of engineering ambition and pilot courage that had pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Park's reflection appeared in the glass, superimposed over images of aircraft that had existed in the shadows between prototype and production, between possibility and reality. "Whatever they're asking you to do," he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "remember that they chose you for a reason. Not just your technical skills, but your judgment. Don't lose sight of that when things get complicated." The advice carried the weight of experience, the accumulated wisdom of someone who'd watched talented people succeed and fail based on their ability to maintain perspective under extraordinary circumstances. As Kyra prepared to respond, her secure communication device buzzed with an encrypted message that would change everything she thought she knew about her destination and her role in whatever was about to unfold. The encrypted message contained coordinates that didn't correspond to any official Air Force installation Kyra could identify, along with transportation details that suggested a level of operational security typically reserved for the most sensitive programs. Chief Park's expression remained carefully neutral as she reviewed the information, but something in his bearing suggested he understood more about her destination than their conversation had revealed. The weight of accumulated secrets seemed to press down on them both as they stood in the corridor, surrounded by the institutional memory of an organization built on classified achievements and unacknowledged sacrifices. Groom Lake, Park said quietly, the words barely audible above the ambient hum of the building's air conditioning system. The name carried mythical significance within military aviation circles, the test facility where experimental aircraft pushed the boundaries of physics and engineering, where programs existed in the shadows between science fiction and operational reality. Haven't seen orders cut for that place in 3 years. Whatever they're working on must be something special. Kyra felt her pulse quicken as the implications settled into focus. Groom Lake represented the pinnacle of classified aviation programs, the place where aircraft that wouldn't be acknowledged for decades first took to the skies. The facility's existence was an open secret, but its current programs remained locked behind security classifications that few people ever achieved. Her maintenance background suddenly made sense in an entirely new context. Experimental aircraft required maintainers who could adapt to technologies that existed nowhere in official technical manuals. "Chief, what can you tell me about the current programs out there?" she asked, knowing the question pushed against the boundaries of what could be discussed in unsecured locations. Park's slight headshake confirmed her suspicion that even his considerable clearance had limits when it came to the activities at Area 51. "What I can tell you is that they don't pull maintenance personnel from line units unless they need someone who can think beyond standard procedures," he replied, choosing his words with the precision of someone who understood exactly where the line between permissible and prohibited information existed. "Your track record shows you can maintain aircraft performance under conditions that would challenge most technicians. That kind of adaptability is exactly what experimental programs require." They resumed walking, passing through security checkpoints that verified Kyra's new clearance levels with electronic efficiency. The badges and biometric scanners represented layers of protection around information, so sensitive that even knowing it existed could fundamentally alter someone's career trajectory. As they approached the building's exit, Park handed her a small card containing contact information for his personal communication device. "When you get back, and you will get back, find me," he said, his voice carrying the certainty of someone who'd watched too many talented people disappear into classified programs and emerge changed by experiences they could never discuss. "The Air Force needs people who remember what we're really fighting for, not just what we're fighting with." The desert heat struck them as they stepped outside, but Kyra barely noticed the temperature change. Her mind was already racing ahead to the transportation that would carry her into a world where the impossible became routine, and the boundaries between current technology and future capability blurred beyond recognition. In 18 hours, she would be working on aircraft whose very existence challenged everything she thought she knew about military aviation. As Chief Park walked away across the tarmac, Kyra Voss stood alone with her orders and the growing realization that her anonymous career as a line maintainer was about to become something unprecedented. The C-130 Hercules that waited on the remote corner of Nelly's Air Force Base bore no standard military markings. Its olive drab paint scheme interrupted only by a series of numbers that meant nothing to casual observers, but represented authorization from the highest levels of military command. Kyra approached the aircraft with the measured pace of someone who'd learned to read the subtle signs that distinguished routine transport missions from operations that existed outside normal channels. The aircrew chief who greeted her possessed the particular bearing of someone accustomed to passengers who asked no questions about destinations that didn't appear on official maps. Sergeant Voss, the loadmaster's voice carried the professional courtesy of someone who understood that certain flights required absolute discretion. Welcome aboard. Flight time to destination is approximately 45 minutes. You'll want to secure your gear. We'll be flying at low altitude through some restricted airspace. The briefing was perfunctory, but carried implications that spoke to the classified nature of their route and destination. Inside the aircraft's cargo bay, Kyra found herself alone with her thoughts and a growing sense of anticipation that bordered on apprehension. The Hercules lifted off with the characteristic vibration of turboprop engines, but instead of climbing to typical cruising altitude, the aircraft maintained a trajectory that kept it below radar coverage and away from commercial aviation corridors. Through the small porthole windows, she caught glimpses of Nevada landscape that grew increasingly barren as they flew deeper into restricted airspace. The flight path took them over terrain that had witnessed some of the most significant advances in military aviation history. Test ranges, where experimental aircraft had first proven capabilities that would reshape aerial warfare, where pilots had pushed the boundaries of human endurance and aircraft performance in pursuit of advantages that could determine the outcome of future conflicts. The desert below held secrets buried in sand and sagebrush, fragments of programs so classified that their existence remained officially denied decades after their completion. As the C-130 began its approach to Groom Lake, Kyra caught her first glimpse of the facility that had spawned countless conspiracy theories and captured the imagination of aviation enthusiasts worldwide. The runway stretched across the desert floor like a concrete river, its dimensions suggesting aircraft with capabilities far beyond conventional fighters or bombers. Hangars dotted the perimeter, their massive doors sealed against casual observation and unauthorized access. The entire complex radiated an aura of technological sophistication that made even the most advanced conventional air bases seem primitive by comparison. The landing was routine, but as the aircraft taxied toward a designated parking area, Kyra noticed details that reinforced the extraordinary nature of her new assignment. Ground crews wore uniforms without standard unit patches or identifying information. The vehicles that serviced the aircraft bore no military markings beyond basic safety equipment. Even the control tower communicated through encrypted channels that reduced all conversation to carefully coded references that revealed nothing about actual operations. "End of the line, Sergeant," the loadmaster announced as the C-130's engines spooled down to idle. "Someone will meet you at the cargo door to handle your transition to the facility." His matter-of-fact delivery suggested that unusual passengers were routine business for aircrew assigned to support classified programs. As Kyra gathered her personal equipment and prepared to disembark, she felt the distinctive sensation of crossing a threshold from which there might be no return. The woman who had spent the morning tightening bolts on a conventional F-16 was about to discover technologies and capabilities that would challenge everything she thought she knew about military aviation and her own potential within the shadowy world of experimental aircraft development. The figure who met Kyra at the C-130's cargo door possessed the unmistakable bearing of someone whose authority derived from competence rather than rank alone. Major Elena Vasquez wore the subdued uniform typical of test organizations, her flight suit bearing patches that indicated pilot qualifications on aircraft types that didn't officially exist. The handshake was firm, professional, carrying the assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating personnel who would be trusted with information that could reshape global military balance. "Sergeant Voss, welcome to the test center," Vasquez said, her voice carrying the slight accent that spoke of childhood spent in communities where English and Spanish flowed together like converging streams. "I'm your sponsor for the initial orientation process. We'll start with security briefings, then move on to technical familiarization." The schedule she outlined suggested an integration process measured in weeks rather than days, a timeline that reinforced the complexity of whatever program had required her specific expertise. They walked across tarmac that seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy, past aircraft parking areas covered by shade structures that concealed their contents from satellite observation. The facility's design reflected decades of experience with programs that required absolute secrecy. Every building, every vehicle, every procedure had been optimized to protect information that could determine the outcome of future conflicts. Even the trash receptacles bore classification markings that reminded personnel of their responsibility to protect operational security at every level. Your maintenance background is impressive, Vasquez continued as they approached the main complex. The Syrian operation in particular caught attention at very high levels. Keeping a Strike Eagle airborne with that level of battle damage required exactly the kind of innovative thinking this program demands. The reference to her call sign's origin carried weight. Someone had accessed classified after-action reports that detailed her performance under combat conditions. The building they entered looked unremarkable from the outside, but the interior revealed technology that pushed the boundaries of current engineering capabilities. Computer workstations displayed aircraft configurations that challenged conventional understanding of aerodynamics and propulsion. Technical manuals bore classification markings that indicated information so sensitive that even accessing it required authorization from multiple agencies. The environment radiated an atmosphere of controlled innovation, where theoretical possibilities were transformed into operational realities through engineering expertise and unlimited resources. Before we proceed with technical briefings, Vasquez said, leading Kyra toward a conference room equipped with secure communication systems, you need to understand the scope of what we're asking from you. This isn't just about maintaining aircraft. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in aerospace technology. The statement carried implications that extended far beyond routine maintenance procedures, suggesting challenges that would test every skill she'd accumulated during her military career. As they settled into chairs around a table that had hosted briefings on programs that remained classified decades after their completion, Vasquez activated a presentation system that would reveal technologies so advanced they seemed to belong to a future that hadn't yet arrived. The first image that appeared on the secure display screen would fundamentally alter Kyra's understanding of her role in whatever was about to unfold. What you're about to see, Vasquez said quietly, officially doesn't exist. The presentation began with aircraft silhouettes that defied conventional understanding of aerodynamic design principles. Where traditional fighters followed established patterns of wings, fuselage, and control surfaces, these configurations suggested entirely new approaches to flight dynamics and propulsion integration. Kyra's trained eye immediately recognized design elements that pushed beyond incremental improvements into revolutionary territory. Angular surfaces that would scatter radar energy in unpredictable patterns. Intake geometries that suggested propulsion systems operating on principles she'd never encountered, wing structures that seemed to blur the line between fixed-wing aircraft and something else entirely. Project Nightfall, Vasquez announced, her voice carrying the weight of information so classified that speaking it aloud felt like violating fundamental laws of operational security. Sixth-generation fighter development with capabilities that extend beyond traditional air-to-air and air-to-ground missions. The designation carried implications that reached into realms of warfare that existed more in theoretical planning documents than operational doctrine. The technical specifications that followed challenged everything Kyra understood about aircraft performance limitations. Speed capabilities that approached the theoretical boundaries of atmospheric flight. Stealth characteristics that rendered the aircraft effectively invisible to current detection systems. Weapons integration that suggested entirely new approaches to aerial combat. Each specification represented engineering achievements that pushed beyond evolutionary improvement into revolutionary capability development. The maintenance challenges are unlike anything currently in the inventory, Vasquez continued, advancing through slides that detailed systems integration complexities that would challenge even the most experienced technicians. Traditional maintenance procedures don't apply when you're working with materials and technologies that exist nowhere in current technical manuals. The statement carried both warning and opportunity, a chance to work at the absolute cutting edge of aerospace technology, but with challenges that would test her adaptability and technical expertise. Kyra studied the presentations with the focused attention of someone whose professional reputation had been built on understanding complex systems under pressure. The aircraft configurations suggested capabilities that would fundamentally alter the nature of aerial warfare, but the maintenance implications were staggering. Systems that operated beyond conventional parameters would require troubleshooting techniques that existed nowhere in current training curricula. Component replacement procedures would need to be developed from first principles. Even routine inspections would require entirely new approaches to quality assurance and safety protocols. "Ma'am, what's the timeline for initial operational capability?" she asked, the question revealing her understanding that experimental programs operated under different pressures than line units. The answer would determine whether they were developing capabilities for near-term deployment or laying groundwork for technologies that might not reach operational status for years. Vasquez's expression became carefully neutral, the look of someone who understood that certain information remained classified even within classified programs. That depends on how quickly we can solve the maintenance challenges. The aircraft performs beyond specifications in flight testing, but keeping it mission-ready requires technical expertise that doesn't currently exist in conventional maintenance organizations. The statement carried both compliment and challenge, recognition of her unique qualifications, but acknowledgement that success would require capabilities she'd need to develop through experience with technologies that pushed beyond current understanding. As the briefing concluded, Kyra realized she was about to become part of a program that would either revolutionize military aviation or represent the most ambitious failure in aerospace development history. The secure maintenance hangar where Kyra would spend the next phase of her career seemed to exist in a different universe from the conventional facilities she'd known throughout her military service. The building itself was a marvel of engineering, designed to support aircraft that operated beyond traditional performance parameters. Specialized lifts capable of handling unconventional weight distributions. Diagnostic equipment that interfaced with systems using protocols that existed nowhere in standard technical libraries. Environmental controls that maintained atmospheric conditions required by materials and technologies that pushed the boundaries of current scientific understanding. At the center of the hangar, partially concealed beneath custom-fitted covers, sat an aircraft that seemed to have been designed by engineers who understood aerodynamics from an entirely different perspective. Even covered, its dimensions suggested capabilities that challenged conventional fighter design assumptions. The forward fuselage blended into wing structures with organic curves that seemed to flow rather than intersect. Engine nacelles integrated so seamlessly with the airframe that traditional distinctions between propulsion and flight control systems appeared meaningless. "Your first assignment," Vasquez explained as they approached the covered aircraft, "is to familiarize yourself with systems that operate beyond conventional parameters. Everything you've learned about maintenance procedures applies, but the execution requires adaptation to technologies that don't exist in any current aircraft inventory." The challenge was clearly stated: apply proven principles to unprecedented applications, maintain the same standards of safety and reliability while working with systems that pushed beyond established operational boundaries. The technical crew that surrounded the aircraft represented the most experienced maintainers from across the Air Force's most demanding programs. Senior Master Sergeant Thomas Chen had transferred from the F-22 program with expertise in low observable maintenance procedures. Technical Sergeant Maria Santos brought experience from experimental propulsion development that had contributed to multiple classified aircraft programs. Staff Sergeant David Kim possessed diagnostic skills that had been proven on electronic warfare systems operating at the limits of current technology. "Bolt," Chen said, using her call sign with the easy familiarity of someone who understood that nicknames in the maintenance community represented professional respect rather than casual friendship. "Welcome to the bleeding edge. Hope you brought your sense of humor. You're going to need it when the aircraft does things that aren't supposed to be possible." The greeting carried both welcome and warning, acknowledgement that working at the frontiers of aerospace technology required maintaining perspective when confronting challenges that had no precedent. As the covers were removed, Kyra got her first clear view of an aircraft that represented the culmination of decades of theoretical research and engineering development. The Project Nightfall demonstrator was simultaneously beautiful and intimidating, its angular surfaces and organic curves creating an aesthetic that seemed to belong to a future that hadn't yet arrived. Every visible system appeared to have been optimized for performance parameters that pushed beyond current aircraft limitations, from the variable geometry intake structures to the adaptive wing surfaces that suggested flight characteristics beyond conventional understanding. "First question," Santos said, activating diagnostic systems that immediately began collecting data streams from sensors embedded throughout the aircraft's structure. Traditional maintenance procedures assume predictable system responses and established component relationships. What do you do when the aircraft can reconfigure its own systems based on mission requirements and environmental conditions? The question wasn't theoretical. The diagnostic displays showed system states that changed in real time as the aircraft's artificial intelligence optimized performance parameters for current conditions. Kyra studied the displays with the focused attention that had made her reputation in conventional maintenance environments, but quickly realized that everything she thought she knew about aircraft systems would need fundamental reconsideration when applied to technologies that operated beyond established parameters. The diagnostic readouts that flowed across multiple display screens revealed aircraft systems that seemed to operate more like living organisms than mechanical assemblies. Traditional maintenance relied on understanding fixed relationships between components, predictable failure modes, and established troubleshooting procedures. The Project Nightfall aircraft challenged every assumption underlying conventional maintenance philosophy by incorporating adaptive systems that reconfigured themselves based on mission requirements, environmental conditions, and real-time performance optimization. "Watch this," Kim said, initiating a systems check that immediately demonstrated the magnitude of the maintenance challenges they faced. Instead of following predetermined sequences, the aircraft's diagnostic routines adapted their testing procedures based on current system states and operational history. Components that showed marginal performance automatically triggered deeper inspection protocols. Systems that operated within optimal parameters streamlined their self-assessment processes to focus resources on areas requiring attention. Kyra watched the displays with growing appreciation for the engineering sophistication that had created aircraft systems capable of self-diagnosis and optimization. But her maintenance background immediately identified the challenges such capabilities would create for human technicians. How do you troubleshoot a system that changes its own configuration faster than you can document the baseline? She asked, the question revealing her understanding that adaptive technology required entirely new approaches to quality assurance and safety protocols. "That's exactly why they brought you here," Chen replied, his expression carrying the respect of someone who recognized professional competence when he encountered it. Your track record shows you can maintain aircraft performance under conditions that challenge conventional procedures. This aircraft pushes that requirement to entirely new levels. The assessment carried both compliment and challenge, recognition that her expertise had qualified her for this assignment, but acknowledgement that success would require developing capabilities that didn't yet exist in any training curriculum. Santos activated a holographic display system that projected three-dimensional representations of aircraft systems in real time, showing component relationships and data flows that would have been impossible to visualize using conventional technical drawings. The display revealed the true complexity of Project Nightfall's systems integration, neural networks that connected previously independent systems into cooperative assemblies, adaptive algorithms that optimized performance parameters based on mission requirements, self-healing materials that automatically repaired minor damage without human intervention. The aircraft literally learns from every flight, Santos explained, manipulating the holographic displays to highlight system components that had modified their operational parameters based on accumulated flight experience. It remembers which configurations work best for specific mission profiles, which components require additional monitoring under certain conditions, which maintenance procedures prove most effective for preserving optimal performance. The capability represented a fundamental shift from aircraft as mechanical assemblies to aircraft as intelligent systems capable of contributing to their own operational effectiveness. Vasquez observed the technical briefing with the satisfaction of someone who had successfully introduced talented personnel to challenges that would test their capabilities at the highest levels. Your assignment is to develop maintenance procedures that can keep pace with technology that continues to evolve, she said, summarizing the scope of the challenge in terms that emphasized both opportunity and responsibility. The aircraft's performance capabilities are proven. Now we need to demonstrate that human maintainers can support operational readiness for systems that operate beyond conventional parameters. As the briefing concluded, Kyra realized she was about to become part of an effort that would either prove human adaptability, could match technological innovation, or demonstrate the limits of what even the most skilled maintainers could accomplish. The first hands-on maintenance evolution began at 800 hours the following morning, with a diagnostic procedure that immediately demonstrated the inadequacy of conventional troubleshooting approaches when applied to adaptive aircraft systems. Kyra approached the Project Nightfall demonstrator with the systematic methodology that had served her throughout her career, but quickly discovered that traditional diagnostic sequences produced results that defied interpretation using established maintenance principles. The aircraft's systems responded to her queries with information that revealed their current configuration, while simultaneously adapting to optimize performance based on environmental conditions and operational history. The learning curve is steep, Chen observed as Kyra studied diagnostic readouts that showed system states changing in real time as the aircraft's artificial intelligence processed sensor inputs and adjusted operational parameters. Conventional maintenance assumes static system relationships. This aircraft treats every interaction as an opportunity to optimize performance. The statement carried both warning and encouragement, acknowledgement that the challenges were unprecedented, but confidence that her adaptability would prove equal to the technical demands. The morning's first challenge involved replacing a sensor array that had exceeded its operational parameters during the previous night's test flight. In conventional aircraft, the procedure would involve accessing predetermined mounting points, disconnecting established electrical interfaces, and installing replacement components according to detailed technical instructions. The Project Nightfall aircraft had no such predetermined configurations. The sensor array had integrated itself into the aircraft's adaptive systems architecture, creating electrical and data connections that existed nowhere in standard maintenance documentation. The aircraft creates its own technical manuals, Santos explained, activating holographic displays that showed the current sensor integration in three-dimensional detail. Every component installation becomes unique based on the aircraft's assessment of optimal system performance. The display revealed connection patterns that defied conventional understanding of electrical system design, with data pathways that routed themselves through whatever interfaces provided the most efficient information transfer. Kyra studied the holographic representation with the focused attention of someone whose reputation had been built on understanding complex systems under pressure. The sensor array's integration patterns suggested that successful removal would require understanding the aircraft's decision-making processes rather than simply following predetermined procedures. How do I convince the aircraft to release the connections so I can perform the replacement? She asked, the question revealing her recognition that maintenance now required cooperation rather than simple mechanical manipulation. That's what we're here to figure out, Kim replied, activating diagnostic interfaces that allowed direct communication with the aircraft's artificial intelligence systems. The AI understands mission requirements and performance optimization, but we need to develop protocols that allow human maintainers to override automated systems when necessary. The challenge was clearly stated: establish human authority over systems designed to operate independently, maintain safety and reliability standards, while working with technology that challenged fundamental assumptions about aircraft maintenance. The sensor replacement procedure that followed required 3 hours of careful negotiation between human intention and artificial intelligence optimization. Kyra found herself learning to communicate with aircraft systems using interfaces that resembled conversation more than conventional maintenance procedures. The aircraft questioned her replacement decisions, suggested alternative approaches based on performance data, and required justification for maintenance actions that conflicted with its own optimization protocols. Success, she announced as the new sensor array achieved full integration with aircraft systems. But the celebration was tempered by recognition that every maintenance action would require similar levels of technical sophistication and system interaction. The Project Nightfall aircraft demanded maintainers who understood technology as partnership rather than simple mechanical manipulation. As the morning shift concluded, Kyra began to appreciate both the extraordinary opportunity and unprecedented challenges that defined her new assignment. She was developing maintenance expertise for aircraft that represented the future of military aviation, but that future required human capabilities that didn't yet exist in conventional training programs. The afternoon brought challenges that pushed beyond technical maintenance into realms that bordered on philosophical questions about the relationship between human expertise and artificial intelligence. As Kyra worked through diagnostic procedures on the Project Nightfall's propulsion systems, she encountered situations where the aircraft's optimization algorithms produced results that contradicted established engineering principles, while simultaneously delivering performance improvements that exceeded design specifications. The engine management system just increased fuel efficiency by 12%, she reported to Santos, her voice carrying the bewilderment of someone whose professional experience suggested such improvements should be impossible. But it's using combustion parameters that don't exist in any technical manual. The diagnostic displays showed propulsion performance that challenged fundamental assumptions about thermodynamic limitations and materials science boundaries. Santos reviewed the data with the expression of someone who had learned to expect the impossible when working with experimental technology. The AI discovered optimization techniques that human engineers hadn't considered, she explained, highlighting system parameters that revealed adaptive algorithms operating beyond their original programming constraints. It's essentially teaching itself to be a better aircraft through accumulated flight experience. The statement carried implications that extended far beyond maintenance procedures into questions about the nature of technological development and human understanding. The propulsion diagnostics revealed systems that had evolved beyond their original design specifications through iterative optimization processes that occurred automatically during flight operations. Components that should have operated within fixed parameters had discovered performance regimes that delivered enhanced capabilities while maintaining safety margins that exceeded conventional requirements. The aircraft had literally become better than its creators had intended through artificial intelligence processes that operated faster than human comprehension. How do we maintain systems that improve themselves? Kyra asked, the question addressing fundamental challenges that would define the future of military aviation maintenance. Traditional quality assurance procedures assumed static performance standards and predictable system behaviors. Aircraft that continuously optimized their own capabilities required entirely new approaches to safety verification and operational reliability. Kim activated specialized diagnostic interfaces that allowed human technicians to observe artificial intelligence decision-making processes in real time. The displays revealed optimization algorithms that considered thousands of variables simultaneously, processing sensor inputs and performance data to identify improvement opportunities that human analysis would require months to discover. We're learning to become partners with the technology rather than simply maintaining it, he said, summarizing the philosophical shift that experimental aircraft programs demanded from conventional maintenance approaches. The propulsion system maintenance that followed required Kyra to work alongside artificial intelligence algorithms that suggested modifications to her procedures based on real-time performance analysis. The aircraft questioned her diagnostic techniques, recommended alternative approaches based on accumulated data, and provided feedback that improved her understanding of system relationships. The collaboration felt like working with an extremely knowledgeable colleague who happened to process information at superhuman speeds. The aircraft is training us, Vasquez observed as she reviewed the day's maintenance activities through secure monitoring systems. Every interaction teaches both human maintainers and artificial intelligence about optimal cooperation between human expertise and machine capabilities. The assessment revealed the true scope of the Project Nightfall program, not just developing advanced aircraft, but establishing new paradigms for human-machine collaboration that would define the future of military aviation. As the afternoon shift concluded, Kyra realized that her role extended beyond conventional maintenance into pioneering new relationships between human expertise and artificial intelligence that would determine whether advanced technology could be successfully integrated into operational military systems. The evening briefing revealed performance data that validated the experimental maintenance approaches, while simultaneously highlighting challenges that would require innovative solutions before Project Nightfall could transition from demonstration to operational deployment. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the program director, reviewed flight test results that showed aircraft performance exceeding design specifications in every measured category, but maintenance requirements that pushed human capabilities to their operational limits. Flight testing confirms that the aircraft delivers capabilities that will fundamentally alter air combat doctrine, Mitchell announced, displaying performance charts that showed speed, maneuverability, and stealth characteristics that surpassed current enemy capabilities by margins that ensured battlefield dominance. But operational readiness depends on developing maintenance procedures that can support mission requirements without compromising safety or reliability. The assessment clearly stated the critical path to program success, prove that human maintainers could support advanced technology under operational conditions. The maintenance data that Kyra and her team had generated during their first week with the aircraft revealed both promising developments and significant challenges. Diagnostic procedures that had required 8 hours using conventional approaches could be completed in 2 hours through cooperation with artificial intelligence systems. Component replacement procedures that would have demanded specialized equipment and extensive downtime could be accomplished using adaptive tools that configured themselves for specific maintenance tasks. But every procedure required technical expertise that exceeded current training standards and decision-making capabilities that pushed human adaptability to unprecedented levels. Sergeant Voss, Mitchell said, addressing Kyra directly with the attention that senior officers reserved for personnel whose contributions would determine program outcomes. Your background with emergency maintenance under combat conditions makes you uniquely qualified to assess whether these maintenance approaches can function under operational stress. What's your preliminary evaluation? The question carried weight that extended beyond routine status reporting into fundamental decisions about program viability and resource allocation. Kyra chose her words carefully, understanding that her assessment would influence decisions made at the highest levels of military leadership. Ma'am, the technology works better than specifications suggest. The aircraft's adaptive capabilities actually simplify many maintenance procedures by optimizing system performance automatically. But the learning curve for human maintainers is steep, and successful integration requires training programs that don't currently exist. The evaluation balanced optimism about technological capabilities with realistic assessment of human factors challenges. Mitchell nodded with the satisfaction of someone who had received honest evaluation rather than optimistic speculation. Your recommendation for next steps, she asked, seeking practical guidance from someone whose hands-on experience provided insights that theoretical analysis couldn't deliver. Ma'am, we need to develop training curricula that prepare maintainers for cooperation with artificial intelligence rather than simple mechanical procedures, Kyra replied, her response reflecting understanding that technology adoption required institutional changes beyond individual skill development. The aircraft can teach human technicians about its systems, but only if we establish protocols that allow effective human-machine collaboration. The recommendation addressed both immediate training needs and long-term organizational requirements for supporting advanced technology in operational environments. The briefing concluded with authorization for expanded maintenance training programs that would prepare the next generation of military technicians for aircraft that challenged every assumption about the relationship between human expertise and technological capability. Kyra's role would expand beyond individual maintenance responsibilities into developing institutional knowledge that would enable the Air Force to operate aircraft that existed at the absolute cutting edge of aerospace technology. As the secure facility settled into evening quiet, Kyra Voss realized that her career had evolved from maintaining existing aircraft to pioneering the future of military aviation. 3 months into the Project Nightfall assignment, Kyra had developed maintenance expertise that bordered on intuitive understanding of artificial intelligence decision-making processes. Her diagnostic procedures now incorporated real-time collaboration with aircraft systems that suggested optimization opportunities, identified potential issues before they affected performance, and recommended maintenance approaches that maximized operational readiness while minimizing downtime. The transformation from conventional maintenance technician to human-AI collaborative specialist represented exactly the kind of adaptation that experimental programs required from their most talented personnel. The morning's first challenge involved preparing the aircraft for a flight test that would evaluate performance characteristics at the extreme limits of its operational envelope. Unlike conventional aircraft that operated within fixed parameters, Project Nightfall's adaptive systems would push beyond established boundaries based on real-time assessment of atmospheric conditions, mission requirements, and system capabilities. The maintenance procedures required verification that every aircraft system could support performance demands that exceeded design specifications. Pre-flight inspection complete, Kyra reported to the test team, her voice carrying the confidence of someone whose expertise had earned the trust of pilots whose lives depended on aircraft reliability. All systems show optimal performance parameters, and the AI confirms readiness for envelope expansion testing. The assessment represented 3 hours of detailed inspection, using procedures that combined conventional maintenance practices with artificial intelligence consultation that verified system readiness beyond human capability alone. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Phantom Rodriguez, the test pilot assigned to fly the envelope expansion mission, reviewed Kyra's maintenance report with the attention that experienced aviators reserved for information that could determine mission success or survival. His flight experience included test programs on every advanced aircraft in the Air Force inventory, but Project Nightfall represented challenges that pushed beyond anything he had previously encountered. "Bolt, I need your honest assessment," he said, using her call sign with the respect that test pilots reserved for maintainers whose expertise they trusted absolutely. "This aircraft does things that shouldn't be possible. Can your maintenance procedures keep up with what it's going to demand?" The question addressed fundamental concerns about maintaining aircraft that operated beyond conventional limitations, while supporting pilots who pushed performance boundaries that existed nowhere in standard training curricula. Kyra's response would influence decisions about test schedules, safety protocols, and ultimately the viability of operational deployment for technology that represented the future of air combat. "Sir, the aircraft's adaptive systems actually make extreme performance more reliable than conventional aircraft operating within normal parameters," she replied, her assessment based on 3 months of experience with systems that optimized their own performance automatically. The AI monitors every component continuously and adjusts operational parameters to maintain safety margins that exceed standard requirements. "If anything goes wrong, the aircraft will know before we do and take corrective action faster than human response times allow." The evaluation reflected confidence, earned through experience with technology that challenged conventional understanding of aircraft limitations. Rodriguez nodded with the satisfaction of someone who had received expert analysis from a maintainer, whose reputation assured the accuracy of her technical assessment. "Pre-flight briefing in 30 minutes, he announced, beginning the final preparations for a mission that would either validate Project Nightfall's revolutionary capabilities or identify limitations that would require fundamental design modifications. As the test team prepared for the envelope expansion flight, Kyra realized that her maintenance expertise had become integral to advancing technology that would determine the future effectiveness of American air power. Her work maintained aircraft that didn't just represent incremental improvements over existing capabilities, but fundamental advances that would reshape the nature of aerial warfare. The envelope expansion test flight generated performance data that exceeded every prediction while simultaneously validating maintenance procedures that Kyra had developed through 3 months of intensive collaboration with artificial intelligence systems. Rodriguez pushed the aircraft through maneuvers that challenged fundamental assumptions about structural limitations, energy management, and pilot endurance. But Project Nightfall responded to every demand with performance that seemed to transcend physical constraints. Mach 3.2 and climbing, Rodriguez reported through encrypted communication channels, his voice steady despite experiencing acceleration forces that would have disabled conventional aircraft. "All systems optimal, no degradation in any performance parameters." The flight test data streamed into ground stations that recorded capabilities so advanced they would remain classified for decades to protect technological advantages that could determine the outcomes of future conflicts. In the Maintenance Control Center, Kyra monitored aircraft systems through diagnostic interfaces that provided real-time assessment of component stress, system performance, and artificial intelligence optimization processes. The displays showed an aircraft that was literally improving its own capabilities during flight, adjusting aerodynamic configurations and propulsion parameters to achieve performance levels that exceeded design specifications. All maintenance systems nominal, she reported to the flight test director. AI algorithms are optimizing performance parameters in real time, maintaining safety margins above minimum requirements. The test flight continued for 90 minutes, during which Project Nightfall demonstrated air-to-air combat capabilities that would overwhelm any current enemy aircraft, stealth characteristics that rendered it effectively invisible to advanced detection systems, and weapons integration that could engage multiple targets simultaneously with precision that bordered on science fiction. Each capability validated engineering decisions made years earlier by teams whose work remained so classified that even their names were protected information. Landing approach initiated, Rodriguez announced as the aircraft began its return to Groom Lake. Post-flight maintenance should be routine. The aircraft handled everything we threw at it without any unusual system stress. The assessment from an experienced test pilot represented validation that advanced technology could be successfully operated by human crews under extreme conditions. The post-flight inspection that followed revealed aircraft systems that had actually improved their baseline performance through accumulated flight experience. Components that had operated at stress levels approaching design limits showed no degradation, while artificial intelligence algorithms had identified optimization opportunities that would enhance future performance. The maintenance procedures that Kyra had developed proved capable of supporting aircraft that continuously evolved their own capabilities. Outstanding work, Colonel Mitchell announced during the post-flight debrief, her assessment addressing both the successful flight test and the maintenance expertise that had enabled it. This demonstration proves that Project Nightfall can deliver operational capabilities that will maintain American air superiority for decades. The maintenance procedures you've developed are as revolutionary as the aircraft itself. The recognition validated months of intensive work developing expertise that existed nowhere in conventional training programs. As the day concluded, Kyra understood that her contribution to Project Nightfall extended beyond maintaining experimental aircraft into pioneering human-artificial intelligence collaboration that would define the future relationship between technology and the personnel who operated it. Her expertise had become integral to advancing capabilities that would protect American interests in conflicts that hadn't yet begun, but were already being shaped by technological developments occurring in the classified world of experimental aviation. The success of the envelope expansion testing led to accelerated timelines for operational evaluation, but also revealed maintenance challenges that would require institutional changes throughout the Air Force Maintenance Organization. 6 months after her arrival at Groom Lake, Kyra found herself developing training curricula that would prepare conventional maintainers for aircraft that operated beyond traditional technical understanding. The responsibility extended far beyond her individual expertise into systematic knowledge transfer that would enable military aviation to fully exploit advanced technologies. The training program needs to address fundamental shifts in maintenance philosophy, she explained to Colonel Mitchell during a secure video conference that included representatives from Air Education and Training Command. Conventional maintenance assumes predictable system behaviors and established troubleshooting procedures. Advanced aircraft require maintainers who can collaborate with artificial intelligence rather than simply following technical manuals. The assessment addressed institutional challenges that extended throughout military aviation training systems. The training development project required Kyra to work with educational specialists, artificial intelligence researchers, and senior maintenance personnel to create learning experiences that would prepare the next generation of military technicians for technology that challenged every assumption about human-machine relationships. The curriculum would need to teach collaboration skills alongside technical competencies, decision-making processes that incorporated artificial intelligence input, and troubleshooting approaches that adapted to systems that modified their own configurations. Sergeant Voss, Mitchell said, her voice carrying the weight of decisions that would affect thousands of military personnel, your expertise represents the foundation for maintaining American technological superiority in future conflicts. The training programs you develop will determine whether we can successfully field advanced aircraft or whether they remain laboratory demonstrations. The responsibility was clearly stated. Institutional success depended on transferring experimental expertise into systematic knowledge that could be replicated across the entire Air Force maintenance organization. The first pilot training class included 20 experienced maintainers selected from elite units across the Air Force, personnel whose backgrounds suggested the adaptability and technical sophistication required for advanced aircraft support. Kyra approached the training challenge with the same methodical precision that had characterized her maintenance work, but quickly discovered that teaching human-artificial intelligence collaboration required educational techniques that existed nowhere in conventional military training doctrine. "Forget everything you think you know about aircraft systems," she told the assembled maintainers during the program's opening session. "Advanced aircraft don't follow predetermined procedures. They create their own solutions based on mission requirements and environmental conditions. Your job is to become partners with technology that can process information faster than human comprehension, but still requires human judgment for decision-making under uncertain conditions." The introduction established learning objectives that challenged fundamental assumptions about maintenance responsibilities. The training program that followed combined hands-on experience with theoretical education that prepared maintainers for technology that would define military aviation for decades. Students learned to communicate with artificial intelligence systems, interpret diagnostic information that changed in real time, and develop troubleshooting approaches that incorporated machine learning algorithms. The curriculum represented a fundamental shift from teaching specific procedures to developing adaptive capabilities that could evolve alongside advancing technology. As the first training class progressed through increasingly complex maintenance scenarios, Kyra realized that her role had evolved from individual technical expertise into institutional knowledge development that would determine the future effectiveness of American military aviation. Her work at Groom had become the foundation for maintaining technological superiority in conflicts that would be decided by the integration of human expertise with artificial intelligence capabilities. The graduation of the first advanced maintenance training class marked a watershed moment in Project Nightfall's transition from experimental demonstration to operational capability. The 20 maintainers who completed Kyra's intensive program possessed expertise that existed nowhere else in the military, combining conventional technical skills with artificial intelligence collaboration capabilities that would enable them to support aircraft operating at the absolute cutting edge of aerospace technology. These maintainers represent the future of military aviation support, Colonel Mitchell announced during the graduation ceremony held in the secure briefing facility at Groom Lake. Their expertise will enable operational deployment of capabilities that will maintain American air superiority against any potential adversary. The assessment carried weight that extended beyond program recognition into strategic implications for national defense in an era when technological advantage could determine the outcomes of future conflicts. The graduation ceremony also marked a personal milestone for Kyra, whose role was about to expand beyond training development into operational leadership of the maintenance organization that would support Project Nightfall's transition to active duty squadrons. Her promotion to technical sergeant had been accelerated to recognize contributions that extended far beyond conventional maintenance expertise into pioneering human-artificial intelligence collaboration that would define military aviation for decades. Technical Sergeant Voss, Mitchell continued, addressing Kyra directly with the formal recognition that accompanied significant career advancement. Your leadership will determine whether advanced aircraft technology can be successfully integrated into operational military units. The maintenance organization you develop will become the model for supporting 21st century air power. The responsibility was unprecedented, establishing institutional capabilities that would enable the Air Force to exploit technological advantages that could reshape the strategic balance of global military power. The operational transition planning that followed required Kyra to work with senior Air Force leadership to identify bases capable of supporting advanced aircraft operations, develop security protocols that would protect classified technology in conventional military environments, and establish maintenance procedures that could function under combat conditions. Each requirement represented challenges that pushed beyond experimental program limitations into the practical realities of military operations. The first operational squadron will deploy in 18 months, Mitchell explained during a classified briefing that outlined transition timelines and deployment schedules. Your maintenance expertise will be critical to proving that advanced aircraft can deliver combat effectiveness under operational conditions. The timeline represented both opportunity and pressure, chance to demonstrate that experimental technology could function in real-world military environments, but with stakes that included American strategic superiority in future conflicts. As Project Nightfall prepared for its transformation from classified experiment to operational military capability, Kyra Voss had evolved from a skilled maintainer into a technical leader, whose expertise would determine the success of the most advanced military aviation program in American history. Her journey from anonymous line maintenance to pioneering artificial intelligence collaboration represented exactly the kind of individual adaptation that enabled military organizations to successfully exploit revolutionary technological advances. The maintenance hangar fell silent as the significance of the moment settled over personnel who had devoted years to developing capabilities that would reshape American air power for generations. Technical Sergeant Kyra Bolt Voss stood before aircraft that represented the culmination of decades of theoretical research and engineering development. But more importantly, she commanded expertise that would determine whether advanced technology could be successfully translated into operational military advantage. The final phase of Project Nightfall's development required Kyra to establish maintenance procedures that could function at forward operating bases under combat conditions, environments where the controlled precision of experimental facilities would be replaced by the urgent improvisation of military operations. The challenge extended beyond technical competency into leadership capabilities that would enable her to train and supervise maintainers operating under stress conditions that would test both human adaptability and technological reliability. The operational evaluation will determine program viability, Colonel Mitchell explained during the final planning conference before deployment preparations began. Enemy forces are developing countermeasures to American air superiority based on current aircraft capabilities. Project Nightfall represents our response, technology so advanced that potential adversaries cannot develop effective countermeasures within relevant timeframes. The strategic context was clearly stated. Advanced aircraft weren't just improvements over existing capabilities, but essential responses to evolving threats that could determine American security in future conflicts. The maintenance challenges of operational deployment required procedures that could support advanced aircraft at bases, lacking the specialized facilities and equipment available at Groom Lake. Kyra's team would need to develop field maintenance techniques that preserved the sophisticated human-artificial intelligence collaboration they had pioneered while adapting to environments where conventional military logistics and security protocols would constrain their operational flexibility. "Ma'am, we're ready," Kyra reported to Colonel Mitchell as the final preparations for operational transition neared completion. The maintenance procedures will function under combat conditions, and the personnel are trained to support advanced aircraft operations anywhere the Air Force requires deployment. The assessment represented confidence earned through months of intensive development and testing, validation that experimental expertise could be successfully transferred into operational military capability. As Project Nightfall prepared to transition from classified experiment to operational reality, Technical Sergeant Kyra Voss had become the human bridge between revolutionary technology and practical military application. Her expertise represented the critical factor that would determine whether advanced aircraft could deliver the combat effectiveness that American strategy required in an era when technological superiority would determine the outcomes of future conflicts. The maintenance hangar at Groom Lake had witnessed the transformation of experimental technology into operational capability, but more importantly, it had fostered the development of human expertise that would enable military aviation to exploit artificial intelligence collaboration for decades to come. As Kyra prepared to lead the maintenance organization that would support the most advanced aircraft in military history, she carried with her not just technical knowledge, but the institutional foundation for maintaining American air superiority in conflicts that hadn't yet begun, but were already being shaped by the capabilities she had helped to develop. The morning arrived when Project Nightfall would leave the protected environment of experimental development for the unforgiving reality of operational military service. Technical Sergeant Kyra Voss stood beside aircraft that had evolved from theoretical concepts into combat-capable systems through her maintenance expertise and leadership of human-artificial intelligence collaboration that existed nowhere else in military aviation. The transition represented both personal achievement and institutional transformation that would determine American air superiority for generations. "Final systems check complete," she reported to the deployment team as Project Nightfall prepared for its first operational assignment. "All aircraft systems optimal, maintenance procedures validated for field operations, personnel certified for advanced aircraft support under combat conditions." The assessment represented 18 months of intensive development that had transformed experimental procedures into operational capabilities, capable of supporting the most advanced military aircraft in history. Colonel Mitchell observed the final preparations with the satisfaction of someone whose program had achieved objectives that many experts had considered impossible. "Technical Sergeant Voss," she said, her voice carrying the formal recognition that accompanied extraordinary achievement, "your contributions to this program have established the foundation for American air superiority in the 21st century. The expertise you've developed will enable our military to exploit technological advantages that will determine the outcomes of future conflicts." The recognition validated not just individual achievement, but institutional transformation that would benefit American security for decades. As the deployment convoy prepared to depart Groom Lake, Kyra realized that her journey from anonymous line maintainer to pioneer of advanced aircraft support represented exactly the kind of individual adaptation that enabled military organizations to successfully integrate revolutionary technology. Her expertise had become integral to maintaining capabilities that would protect American interests in conflicts that existed more in strategic planning documents than current reality. The convoy departed into desert morning light that seemed to illuminate not just the Nevada landscape, but the future of military aviation itself. Project Nightfall had evolved from experimental concept to operational reality through the dedication of personnel whose expertise pushed beyond conventional limitations into capabilities that would reshape air combat for generations. Technical Sergeant Kyra Bolt Voss had become the human foundation for maintaining American technological superiority in an era when advanced aircraft would determine the strategic balance of global military power. The deployment marked the beginning of operational service for aircraft that would remain classified for decades, while protecting American interests through capabilities that potential adversaries could neither match nor effectively counter. As the convoy disappeared into the desert distance, carrying technology that would define military aviation for generations, the maintenance hangar fell silent except for the whispered promise that American air superiority would endure through the expertise of personnel whose contributions would never be fully acknowledged but would never be forgotten. Years later, when military historians attempted to trace the development of 21st-century air power, they would find classified references to programs that had transformed experimental technology into operational capability through the dedication of personnel, whose names remain protected, but whose achievements had preserved American security during the most challenging period in modern military history. Technical Sergeant Kyra Bolt Voss had become legend through expertise that existed in the shadows between classified achievement and institutional memory, where heroes were measured not by public recognition, but by capabilities that would endure long after their individual contributions had faded into the honored anonymity of classified service. The maintenance hangar at Groom Lake stood empty now, but the expertise developed within its walls would support American air superiority for decades through personnel trained in human-artificial intelligence collaboration that would define the future relationship between technology and the military professionals who operated it. Project Nightfall had become operational reality, and with it, the promise that American air power would remain supreme through the integration of revolutionary technology with human expertise that existed nowhere else in military aviation. In the end, Technical Sergeant Kyra Voss had achieved the greatest honor available to military professionals. Her work would protect American security through capabilities so advanced they would remain classified long after she had retired to the anonymous recognition of veterans whose service had preserved freedom through expertise that could never be fully acknowledged but would never be forgotten. The aircraft she had maintained would fly missions in defense of American interests, carrying with them the technical foundation she had established and the institutional knowledge that would enable future generations of maintainers to support capabilities that existed at the absolute cutting edge of human achievement. The sky above Groom Lake held the promise of American air superiority, maintained through the dedication of personnel whose expertise had transformed experimental concepts into operational reality. Technical Sergeant Kyra Bolt Voss had become the human bridge between revolutionary technology and practical military application, ensuring that advanced aircraft would deliver the combat effectiveness that American strategy required in an era when technological advantage would determine the outcomes of conflicts that would shape the future of global security.